Hey guys, so today I'm getting to sit down with the Rivals of Ether developer to come and tell you about how the game is made behind the scenes. Min, do you want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yep. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Mand. I'm a technical sound designer at Moonsailor Studios, and we have a partnership with Ether Studios. So we're one of the two audio studios that make audio for the game,
Hmm.
both music and sound effects.
Yeah, it's super sick. So what kind of stuff does like Moonsailor work on for like the Rivals games?
Right now, we're doing the audio implementation, which is basically what I do most of the time,
Hmm.
dialogue editing, sound effects, and some of the music. So, some of the music is handled by Resoforce, and some of the music is handled by Moonsailor.
Hmm.
Uh, there are some people that work on both studios most of the time, but the composing lead of Moonsailor is Rafael Langoni, and the
Hmm.
composing lead of Resoforce is Fleshy Goodness.
Gotcha, yeah.
Uh, and he worked for the first game. Both
Mhm.
Rafael and Fleshy worked for the first game,
Yeah.
actually.
So speaking of that, like what would be like the difference where it's like what would one studio like Rezo Force and what would Moonsailor, like what would be the difference in them and what they do? Or is it kind of just like project
Uh,
based?
One of the main differences is that the creative direction of Resoforce is handled by Fleshy,
Hmm.
basically. So Moonsailor is a separate entity, but we do a lot of people that work for Moonsailor also partnership with Resoforce a bunch of
Hmm.
times. But anything that is signed by Resoforce has the 100% creative direction of Fleshy Goodness, and Moonsailor is slightly more independent, though it's not really uh, that defined on Rivals of Ether 2. But that is a good start to understand. I'm
Yeah.
doing the short version because even inside the development team, sometimes the longer version can be a bit too much.
Hmm.
But one of the main differences is that Moonsailor is entirely responsible for sound effects and dialogue editing in the game.
Yeah,
So I
that makes
think
sense.
that's a big difference.
Hmm. And also, like, what's the difference between what y'all do and then what like Ether Studios do, like the main team that like develops the game, besides like the sound and audio?
Yeah, actually, I've been pretty close with Ether Studios lately. I've been working full time in Rivals of Ether 2 ever since the release of the game, and especially during this year. I started working in the game. I remember it was close to the time when it was announced the first time, when they had like the announcement trailer. I think it was 3 years ago. I'm not entirely
Yeah,
sure at this
yeah, it was a
point.
good minute ago. It's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the Rivals Direct, I think. Either Studios Direct, actually.
Yeah.
And I started working in Rivals of Ether 2 at that point. The game was already in development, but since we have like a relatively large amount of people in the studios, we had to work on other projects as well. So we were partners of Ether Studios, but not directly inside the Ether Studios structure. But personally, like talking about myself, I ended up going full time on Rivals after
Mhm.
release because the game needs at least one audio person full
Yeah.
time in the game because it's a live service. There's a lot of things happening, and then any other games that Moonsailor or Resoforce are doing, the other team members take those
Hmm.
currently.
And I saw that Moonsailor, like I looked through y'all's website before we sat down here today, and y'all like worked on a lot of games. Do you have any that like stand out to you?
There is one game that I really liked our work.
Mhm.
We had a lot of time in that game because it was in the middle of the pandemic and all of
Mhm.
that. Like we had a lot of time on our hands because of that. And I feel like we went really above and beyond, which is a game called Ever Tried.
Yeah.
It's a roguelike game where you climb a tower, defeating monsters. It's kind of a mix of roguelike and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon sort of gameplay.
Oh, that's sick.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's it's pretty fun, and I'm pretty proud of the work we did in that game. It was insane. Like we did an insane amount of assets that most games with that scope would probably have less, but I don't regret it a single bit. It was a fun experience, and it was well worth it.
Yeah, no, I get that for sure. That seems super awesome. I was looking through y'all's trailers, and I think I remember seeing that one stand out to me a bit. Um, but moving on, kind of to loop back to like we were talking about the studios, like what kind of work do you do specifically on the game? Like, do you do like sound effects, like voice lines, music, or like kind of a mix of all of that?
Yeah, I do a bunch of things, especially because I'm more in the front of the game, so I'm doing the meetings with either studios. I'm sometimes talking with community when we do like big audio changes.
Yeah.
If you see Mand slash Fuji
Hmm.
anywhere, that's
Oh,
me.
on the noteboard.
Uh, yes, both on the
Oh, sick.
noteboard or Reddit.
Hmm.
Sometimes in YouTube, I might answer something. On
Yeah.
the noteboard, I won't usually be there. I was there when we did like some huge changes to the hits of the game. And then we were like, maybe it's faster if you're there to answer
Hmm.
some of the questions. But usually I don't do a lot of noteboard. Like I read the things that are there. I can maybe send them to the community managers inside either studios and be like, hey, we have an answer to this, so you can answer if you think it's necessary.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do answer stuff on Reddit, but I mostly joke on Reddit.
Yeah.
Like maybe people are like, oh, this voice line sounds like X thing, and I joke about it sometimes. I remember when we changed Rastor's Victory voice line, that someone was like, oh my god, he's so extra in the voice line, and it was like, hey, he had a repurposed taunt line in his Victory for so long, like he couldn't contain his
Yeah.
excitement. So
He
so
was so
yeah,
happy
it's
to get a
mostly
new voice
jokes on
line.
Reddit.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do share some things like when on Reddit, but it's mostly jokes there.
No, yeah, I get you for
The
sure.
other
Also,
thing that I do,
oh yeah.
since I'm a technical sound designer, the technical part is because I implement the audio in Unreal Engine.
Mhm.
So I help the developers with fixing bugs. Sometimes I add the sounds to the characters and the other things. Uh, I do the implementation inside the middleware that we call Fmod Studio. Won't go too much in detail, but if
Yeah,
anyone
yeah.
wants to look that up. Uh, and I do dialogue editing and some of the sound design. Currently, the way we had set up, we have two sound designers that do character kits. So it's Fernando Pepe and Mateus Polatti. They do the sounds for the character. So you heard Olympia sounds. I really like them myself. Olympia sounds were all made by Pepe and Matt. And that's gonna keep being like this. Like we always have a dedicated sound designer only to do like sounds for the characters. But anything else that is entering after release was probably done by me. So Perfect Shield sound, rework on Rastor's sound effects was done by me, and skin sounds in general. So anything that appears in the day to day of the game that is not new characters,
Yeah,
it's being done by me.
that's super sick. And just curious, like kind of on that topic, like how do y'all make a sound that's more abstract? Like maybe a sound like a sword hit or like an arcane bubble? Like what's the process to like making that? Do y'all like mix it digitally or use like a pre-made sound or like how do y'all do that?
Actually, it's a cool process. It depends on the sound, but usually we need to use what we call building blocks to make those sounds. Those building blocks, they can be many things. It can be things that we record ourselves, like a lot of things that enter the game, we have sounds that we record ourselves. They can be synthesizers or synthesized sounds. Sometimes we get those building blocks from commercially available royalty-free libraries that are done for sound designers. Uh, I like to say that those libraries are treasure troves from past sound designers that they
Yeah.
pass ahead. Because a lot of them are like life works of sound designers that they sell, and you can access those. And then we use those building blocks and we build the sound on top of that. So we try to convey the action and the according to the animation, the VFX, and it's never just a single sound. Like it's very very rare for you to just like record a sound and it just works. I have an example actually.
Yeah.
There is a sound of Rastor in his Kate in the introduction of the Tails Light skin. That was one of the sounds that I made, and just in the first, like just in the beginning of the sound, where you have the character like hitting the ground, you have two sounds of skate hitting the ground, You have wind whoosh that is leading in the sound. Then you have the sound of a hamburger when you put that on the pan and it does a
Yeah.
sizzling sound. Like you have a little bit of that, and then you have one more sound that I forgot what it is. But I know that in that intro you have things like you have wood breaking, you have a horse rope.
Yeah.
So like it's crazy because sometimes like let's say you're the one on top of the skate. You're hearing the realistic sound, but you're also feeling the sound. Like the sound sounds more important because you're feeling it with your body in general. So just using the realistic recorded sound just doesn't cut it most of the time. And also
Yeah.
microphones have limitations, like you're never capturing the full sound, you're capturing a snapshot of it. Microphones hear differently basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also uh we just grew used for sounds to be super designed, like for things to be hyper realistic, or in the case of Rivals to maybe not be realistic at all.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And also, like, kind of on top of that question, like, how do you take, like, pre-existing sounds, so let's say, like, a swing from Loxodon or, like, a voice line, and then you kind of, like, make it kind of retro, kind of, like, mechanical sounding, right, for, like, the future skin, stuff like that? How would you, like, what's the process
Oh,
behind that?
those are fun ones
Mhm.
actually. We use a DAW, like digital audio workstation, called Reaper. Uh, it's not the only one, but it's one of the most used in games, and I think everyone that is doing sound effects for the game, they are using Reaper one way or another, and they have a batch processing function. So basically, we spend a bunch of time looking for a chain of effects that will work for that, and we apply them to all the voice lines. Sometimes we need to go and fix some of them or do something, modify the chain slightly for some of the voices. But the most fun part is actually getting the sound in the chain, like this exploration to find the right chain. And Rivals of Ether 2 actually poses a very interesting challenge for that. I have a good example of a challenge, like a skin that was very challenging, and I'm pretty proud of the result. That is Demigod Arcane.
I love that one.
Uh, Demigod Arcane is wild. We have in audio, we have something that we call impulse responses for reverb. Basically, what you can do is you can sample a room, like the reflections of the room, and you can then input that sound in the convolution reverb,
Mhm.
and it's gonna simulate like if you're in that room. Like you use that for making very realistic reverbs. But in the case of Demigod Arcane, I use that to feed water samples into
Okay.
the convolution reverb, and then it turned the water sample into a reverb. And I used two of them, and then I used some other processing. Some of the voices I would mango, some of them I would reverse. It was a very manual process for the skin. But there's a challenge. Like this would be perfect in most other games. Like it would work perfectly and it would sound great for this
Mhm.
for the demigod. It would sound weird. Demigod Arcane voices, they do sound weird, but that's intentional because it is a demigod. It's a
Yeah.
thing beyond comprehension. But Rivals of Ether 2 is a fighting game.
Mhm.
So a fighting game needs to be snappier. So one thing that I had to make sure of is that the end of the file, so like the tail of the sound, could never go past the release of the move. So there's a recovery window for the move. I needed the sound to end before that, or very close to that. Otherwise, it just feels like the sound is leaking and it's not satisfying when that happened.
Yeah.
I actually, after we released, someone on Noteboard talked about the hit sounds being kind of leaky like this. And I was like, oh, that's true. 'Cause I didn't do that process on hit sounds specifically when
Hmm.
it released. And then I went back, cut the hit sounds to be ready on recovery. And actually, we cut a couple of sounds, so like smaller VO, like jabs and other small movements. They don't have VO on Demigod Arcane, and they
Yeah.
do have on the normal one.
No, yeah, that makes sense. So like
And
whenever
then,
there's like a balance patch, right? Let's say if it made
mhm.
like an arcane move, right? Let's say if it lasted longer, would you have to edit then the sound effect like design to like match the new length of the move?
Most of the times we actually don't,
Okay.
because Trevor made a system for us that is really amazing for adding the sounds. Like we have a base system for adding sounds in the game, where we can tell the game, hey, this sound is gonna play on this window on X frame, and we can make it so like there's an active frame for the window, and you can make it like, oh, you're gonna play 2 frames before, like you're gonna start playing 2 frames before this active window.
Okay. Yeah.
uh Usually most of the time the sound just fits without any change. Like I don't think there was ever, no, there was one situation, like 1 or 2 situations we had to change the sound itself to conform to the change.
Hmm.
Both times were on Fleet. Fleet Taunt was changed, and Fleet Neutral Special. What is the one where she gets the dice?
I think it's our neutral B. Yeah.
Neutral, yeah, Neutral Special got changed, and but that one was a big change because like they forgot the dices, like the dices.
Yeah.
People thought it was RNG, and that was bad because
Yeah.
it isn't at all. So they removed the dices, and then we had to change the sound because no more dice meant there was extra sound.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think we never had to change it like this, which
Yeah.
is great.
That works good. And speaking of like characters like Fleet and stuff like that, do you have like a favorite character in the game to work on, or like a favorite one like that you just like enjoy?
Mm, Honestly, my favorite character in the game is one that hasn't been released yet,
Oh,
and I
that's
can
exciting.
talk about that.
Yeah.
So, but from the characters that have been released, I have some opinions about them. I love Olympia. I
Yeah.
think we never had a character that sounded as good as Olympia sounds now,
Hmm.
which is good. It means we evolved over time, and the aesthetics of the game became more solidified.
Hmm.
And I think from now on, we have a very good blueprint to follow for
Yeah.
the next few characters. Uh, One of my favorite characters in the beginning of the game, like when I started working, was Fleet,
Oh,
because Fleet was really interesting. Like the game, let's say we have a horizontal line where on one side you have very realistic or hyper realistic sounds,
hmm.
and in the other end you have very not subjective, very stylized sounds, so they're not realistic at all. Think anime sounds, cartoon sounds. In the beginning, like for characters like Zeta, Rastor, and Rano and Krag, Rivals was more on the side of the realistic. It wasn't 100% realistic, of course, but like it was more to that side of the sounds. Fleet was the first character where we went to the stylized sound, and for me, that was really cool. I think at the time we were still shy on the stylization of Fleet's character, but it just worked really well. And then we had like Clara and Loxodon. They couldn't go to that side because they're more serious characters, so they needed to be on the other side. I think the character that opened doors for us was Arcane. Like Arcane has a special place in my heart
Hmm.
because Arcane needed to be 100% stylized. Like Arcane has barely any realistic sounds
Yeah.
in his kit. Like it has some water, but it has a lot of synthesizers. It has a lot of like quote unquote anime style sounds in his
Yeah.
kit. And once Arcane was in the game, we could basically do everything with the newer characters. Because, like, no character would be more stylized than Arcane, at
Yeah.
least for now.
Yeah. Oh, for now, that's a full
So,
teaser. Um, but speaking of like characters like that and like different characters, was there a character that was like super hard to work on or one that was like really challenging? I know you mentioned a few earlier.
Forsburn was the
Forsberg?
hardest
Yeah.
character to get right. Because smoke and fire, like, how do you make it sound like smoke, but not make it sound like fire? Because
Yeah.
smoke and fire sounds, there's a lot of overlap between them, and realistic smoke sounds don't really exist. Like,
Hmm.
smoke doesn't make sound in real life.
Yeah.
So fire is close by, so we use a lot of fire and wind sounds together.
Hmm.
But then you have the risk of like reading as fire and not as smoke, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah. No.
very hard to deal with.
Do you have like a character that was like the easiest to work on or like your favorite to work on?
Uh, I mean, I can only talk by how things went, like after feedback and other things, because, like I said, other sound designers made the character sounds.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But from what I can see, like from the whole process, I think the easiest one was Olympia.
Yeah.
Maybe not the easiest to make the sounds, but like we barely had any internal feedback on her because it
Hmm.
was like she worked. Like most of the sounds went in the first pass and they worked very well.
Yeah.
So Olympia was probably the easiest in terms of the process of making her.
No, yeah, I love her sound design for sure. So kind of pivoting a little bit, like what's the process to like becoming like a sound designer for a game like this? Like is it like a lot of schooling or is it more like self-taught? Like what's kind of the intro to that kind of field?
There are some colleges you can go. You can do music school, or you can do sound design for movies. I think they are more targeted at movies, but I think those are mostly in the US. I'm not located in the US, so I didn't have those, and I actually didn't go to college myself. Like
Mhm.
my first job was in game audio, which is actually kind of a rare thing nowadays, but it's just because I decided I want to do it pretty early in my life. And I've been in the industry for 9 years now,
Wow.
but it was a bit of luck. It was a bit of being in the right place and the right time. Uh, there was some of that, but I think you have a lot of material in YouTube and in other places. You have a lot of free stuff that you can download to start. Like we have some free stuff nowadays that I could only dream like 10 years
Yeah.
ago. And 10 years ago we had free stuff that people would never dream like 20 or 30 years ago. So it's way more accessible than ever. And of course, there are more people trying to enter the industry and all of that. But I think opportunities are there, and you need to be ready when they appear. Like, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Like, you need to smile to Lady Luck so Lady Luck can smile
Yeah.
back.
No, for sure.
Because it is definitely hard to enter and to, like,
Hmm.
it took a while for me to be able to pay my bills with
Yeah.
game audio. Like, it took some years. But it is also a pretty cool industry to work on.
Mhm.
I feel like nowadays, it kind of feels like there is no dream industry where you can just like relax and get a giant paycheck and live comfortably. Like
Yeah.
there's barely any of those. Like, and those that do pay large paychecks,
Mhm.
they're not stable anymore. Like you don't have a stable job anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe there are some, but I think most of the jobs lost that stability that older generations might have gotten sometimes.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like one of the reasons why I decided to work with games is because I thought, hey, we're screwed either way, so let me be screwed doing what I love.
Yeah.
And it worked. So I'm here.
And speaking of that, like, there's like a more personal question, not really like rivals related, but like, did you have a favorite game like growing up that inspired you to do like game audio? Like, what kind of made you think like, oh, I want to go and do this? You know?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I think the first thing that made me think of doing anything for media was Studio Ghibli
Hmm.
was the reason why I thought, hey, I want to do stuff for media. I wanted to be a media composer at the time.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
do work with composing, but not in my day job.
Hmm.
But it was kind of like I want to be a media composer, but I love games, so maybe I can get both of them together. And I think mm, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there was a specific game that brought me in. Like, it was
Mhm.
most in general. I liked games and I wanted to be a media composer or anything related to media. Because I have a very specific view on
Mhm.
art nowadays. And I think, like, yes, you can make music as its own thing, like, it can be its own art piece. You can make sound design. I mean, it's kind of hard to make sound design for nothing, but
Yeah.
you can. But when it's part of something bigger, it kind of feels like it, I don't know, it reaches bigger heights for me. So I always thought like I prefer doing music or sound effects or anything for something more rather than just
Yeah.
being by itself. Not that being by itself is bad by any means, but that was how I felt personally about the whole thing.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I definitely like I appreciate that like viewpoint of art because I'm like a studio artist. Like that's my
Mhm.
normal job besides doing like content and all that. So that's like super interesting to get to hear like your outlook on that. And speaking of that, like do you ever make like independent projects like on your own, like your own kind of like music or sound design? I heard you mention that a little bit.
Yeah, for a while I had some trouble doing music because I was sick for a couple of years, couldn't find
Oh
out what I had,
yeah. Hmm.
and they were really hard years. One of them I was actually working already in Rivals, and it was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And after I got back into music, like I could do my day job fine, but it was like it gave me a lot of creative block because it is hard to be creative when you're sick.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to go into creative areas of game development, heed my advice. Take care of your body,
Yeah.
because being creative when you're sick is hard. Like it takes way more of yourself to be creative when you're sick. Like you need to be really good at what you do to do that, and it is very hard. After I came back, I took a mascot that I had that is Fuji,
Mhm.
and I turned Fuji into a sort of not really a persona, but just an outlet where I could make music. And then some VTubers came to me and were like, "Hey, do you make music for VTubers?" And then this kind of became a side gig of mine.
That's super sick. I kind of love that. I love like working with like people like VTubers. Like I've done a few art and like stream overlay type stuff. So that's like super interesting. Speaking of that and like kind of like wrapping back to Rivals though, like is there a lot of like creative control that you have over like how the sounds like sound in the game or like what's the process for like creating that? Like do you kind of get to choose or do you have like a like you're kind of vetted on like okay, we want this exact sound for this like sound effect, you know?
I think we have more freedom than usual.
Mhm.
Every sound that goes in the game needs to be approved by either Dan or Trevor or both.
Mhm.
Dan being the director and Trevor being the lead programmer. And I mean, he has a lot of control over a lot of parts of the game as well.
Yeah.
Uh, Usually they have. The thing is, I feel like it's moved than normal because even though we get some feedbacks and we need to redo some things or need to adjust some things, uh, I actually think both Dan and Trevor are usually right in their feedback.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, sometimes, like, the most that happened on Rivals was maybe I would do it differently, but I don't think their solution is wrong. It's not the one I would choose, but I still think that their solution works. I think there was like I can't remember a time where it was like oh, I don't agree with this at all, but I'll make it because they're the owners of the game in a
Yeah.
way. No, there was I can't remember a single time where that happened, and that speaks a lot. I think Dan is a really good director. Also,
Yeah, it kind
it's
of
really good working with him.
from an outsider's point of view, like, and so this is kind of just like an inference, but it seems like he has like a very good understanding of like the total vision of the game, you know, like he has like a clear view for it and he knows what it wants it to be. So then it's like it is very like streamlined, at least as like a product for me, like looking from the outside. Like I can tell he has like goals for it and like what he wants it to play like, what he wants it to sound like, you know.
Yeah,
So
I think he has a very good grasp on what a platform fighter should be.
yeah,
So like there are you can make a platform fighter in many ways, and people are gonna have different opinions on what are the right ways of doing it. But
sure.
at least like on a more fundamental level, I think Dan has a very good grasp of like, hey, this should sound like this because it works better for the game. And every time Dan says this,
Mhm.
and I go and play the game, it's like, yeah, he's
Yeah,
right. Like
yeah,
this should be different because it's more satisfying, it's snappier, or it feels better. Sometimes you put the sound in the game to test anyways, and it's like it's not quite there,
yeah.
and that makes it easier to work. Like it's easier to work with someone giving you feedback that you can agree with.
Hmm.
You need to learn. Like we learn over time to do feedback, even if we disagree with that. Like it's a survival skill in the industry,
Yeah,
but it's very rare for us to not need to, like, don't need to be do something just because they're telling us to do it, but actually understanding why they're telling us to do that.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's like a really like healthy loop of like, hey, like this doesn't sound quite right. Let's like change it up a little bit, and then y'all can do that. That seems like super streamlined. Speaking of though,
Yes.
like, so for there's like sound effects that aren't attached to certain characters. So like the knockout sound effects that you can get in like the free monthly passes, or like extra sound effects on like the victory screens and things like that. How are those made? Is it just like the same system, or?
Yeah, I I have a little bit more freedom when it comes to like victory stuff and taunts, because they are not super gameplay related, but they usually go to Dan and Trevor as well
Mhm.
before they go in the game,
Yeah,
and most of them are done by me currently. So
yeah.
it's the part that I'm doing a lot of cosmetic stuff and also system updates and other things. Because the game launched, when the game launched, we were swarmed by bugs. There were a lot of things on our to-do list that we couldn't get in time for launch, and some of them came afterwards. And I'm pretty happy with some of the updates we've made. Uh, some of them were bigger, some of them were smaller, but I think in general we're getting the game to sound as good as, like, we're getting it to the place we want it to be in terms of
Yeah.
sound. There are still things to work on, but I think we're getting there.
Hmm. I have a curious question because you mentioned the updates. Like, how do y'all decide whenever you're going to like push a big update that changes a lot of things? Do y'all like hold those for like a natural time to like release them, or is it just like as soon as you guys have it done, y'all push it out the door and see what the community thinks?
No, there's a certain planning
Hmm.
because if we're doing updates that change a lot of things, we need to be ready to deal with the community response to that. Like, ideally, I'll give an example. We did a hit changes update
Yeah, I remember
earlier
that.
this year. It was like all the hits changed some way. I didn't change the sounds of the hits, like the original sounds that were used, but those hits were being processed in real time in Fmod Studio, and there was like an effect chain on all of them. In groups of hits, so like blunt hits had an effect chain, and then this fed into another effects chain. We did this before launch because hits were a point of like discussion before launch, uh, and then we did that like so we could have the hit sounding good.
Mm.
But like I said, we wanted to update things after launch to get closer to our vision for the game, and hits were a barrier that we had to deal with.
Yeah,
Because in a way, some of the hits were kind of all over the place. It wasn't too bad, but like it was holding me for making other smaller changes that I think would benefit the game. And also there were some general changes for loudness and volume that we needed to be able to make because of future console releases and other stuff. Uh, and we would get blocked by that eventually. So I was like, no, we need to make this change. I took all the sounds. I was like, I'm not changing the sounds themselves. I only making any changes with processing afterwards. It was still a big change. Like some sounds would feel very different, and I knew from the get go that some characters might feel worse, quote unquote,
Yeah.
Because I have an example like Claring. Claring was a problem before. Like Claring was louder than everyone else because she was louder in terms of volume, but also her hit sound effects were like had a lot of high end on them. So that made them cut even more to the mix. And I was like, yes, she needs to be controlled. And sometimes if you used to the old hit sound, they're gonna feel worse. And then like I made those changes slowly over time. And when we were ready, I was like, hey, community, I'll let you guys know that we're doing this. Uh, some people will probably have a very strong reaction,
Yeah.
but we need to do this. Like, I believe in this. I would never have done that if I didn't believe it was the right choice. Because in general, it's better to update adding new stuff rather than changing or removing stuff. Removing is usually a bad move, and
Yeah.
changing always creates opinions. And then we released the change, and that was the patch where I was in the note board.
Yeah. I remember that.
And I was like in the note board so I could answer people more directly if needed. And then at that point I was like collecting feedback from everywhere, from the mains Discord, from Noteboard, from Reddit, from
Yeah.
YouTube. It was when I found your channel
Oh, what?
initially.
That's sick. Yeah. I remember.
Yes, I was.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I remember whenever those changes happened, I was like, oh, like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. And, like, looking back, like, I watched some old gameplay of mine from before those changes, and I was like, this sounds so weird. Like, now it sounds, like, so quality and things like that. And, like, in the past, it sounded good too, right? But, like, now, like, the hits cut through, like, very cleanly. And so I remember at first thinking, like, oh, I'm not sure if I like this. And then, like, now looking back, it's like, this change was, like, so, like, quality. Like, it really did help out the game a lot, at least in my opinion, like, just from a spectator point of view. Like, just watching, like, you
Yeah,
hear whenever a move hits, like, super cleanly now.
yeah. I feel like this. It was important to listen to the feedback of players, because even sometimes, even if you disagree with some feedback directly, you can infer a lot of things from it. Uh, So like even the feedbacks that were like, "Oh my god, I hate how it's sounding now,"
Hmm.
which are like, "Oh, this is not constructive," but you can get something from it because I noticed that the players that hated the change were Zeta and Reno players mostly,
Yeah.
and then the positive were like Maple and Raster mains got out of their way to say, "Hey, it's sounding better."
Hmm.
I was like, hey, they were the winners with the change. I think most of the other players were kind of okay. Like they either didn't notice or didn't care much, which for me it was a good answer to that. So then I was like, hey, I need to go back, look at Zeta, Reno, and I think Claring had some issue with the files that were non-intended,
Hmm.
and then I fixed them, and in the other patch we got like the final version.
Yeah.
And then at this point it's like we're not changing again. Like unless we really, really, really think it's for the best, we're not changing again because
Hmm.
it's better to leave things as is
Yeah, that makes
rather
a lot of
than
sense.
keep changing.
Speaking of, like, changes, did y'all change it, like, after the big patch? Didn't y'all make a few changes to, like, how, like, Rano and Zetter sounded? If I remember right.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yes, I'm still not quite sure. Zeta and Reno are very interesting in this case because it's not the hits themselves, but the interaction between their moves and the hits
Yeah.
that make them sound different from the other characters. Because they're using most of the moves from them are using blunt hits, and most of the cast has some blunt hit in their kits.
Hmm.
So I did some other changes to help alleviate that.
Yeah.
And there are some smaller changes that we might do in the future as well, but mostly like those changes are not changes that you should feel much. Like
Hmm. Yeah,
it might sound better, but you won't be able to pinpoint what exactly changed.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And how many different kinds of hits are there? Because there's the blunt hits, and then what are the other ones?
We have quite a few hits. Most of the characters actually they have unique hits for their kits, or at least hits that came with them. But we have blunt hits for most of the physical hits. in the game. We use blunt. Uh, we want to have a second one in the future that is kind of like a punch sound that is more specifically like a stereotypical punch hit. Because blunt sometimes does not get us there. I think Lovers Olympia skin would greatly benefit from that.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't have all the crystal VFX, but then we were like, just changing those to blunt will feel less satisfying. So we
Yeah.
left those. We have crystal, that is used for Olympia. We have dagger, that is that came with force burn.
Yeah.
We have fire, that came with Zetterburn. Loxodont uses fire a lot. We have guitar hits for Rockstar Crag. We have ice hits for Atlas, leaf slash hits for Maple. We have the meatball hit. It's actually called meatball in Fmod Studio. It's for Loxodont and Special.
Yeah.
Don't let Trevor know that it's still called meatball in Fmod Studio.
I won't tell him.
We have the bite hit for Arcane and Zetterburn, plasma, poison, rock, shield, slash, small wind. Actually, I think it's called magical wind for fleet, smoke for Zetterburn, Teeper for Clary, water, weep for maple, wind, and wood. That is the hits for Chef Loxodont. So we have quite a few of them
a lot.
actually.
I didn't know.
Some characters share some.
Mhm.
Most of the characters share blunt and slash in one way or another.
Yeah.
But they can share other ones as well.
No, yeah,
Sometimes.
that's super sick. So that does seem like a lot to mix though. Like I thought it was only like 2 to like 5-ish different hit types, but that's like a lot to like have to like go in there and figure them all out.
Yeah, and they need to sound balanced because they're the loudest thing except KO.
Mhm.
So like they really need to be balanced, otherwise you start to lose the balance in other areas of the game. Like those need to be a flat line in terms of balance. Of course, you still have like strong hits, medium hits, and weak hits, but one thing that showed me that I was in the right track is that right now I can lower or raise the volume of all the weaks, all the mediums, all the heavies, and they just work. Like you raise them and they feel the same in
Yeah.
balance.
That makes sense for sure. What's the process to like choosing like how loud like a specific hit will be? Like do you just kind of like compare it to like the game audio itself and then like balance it to each move, or is there like a different system that you'll use?
There's actually a very good video of Sakurai in his channel where he talks about this. But in general, we some sounds they might be specificities for them, but usually we define by category of sounds how loud things should be. So basically, in a way, it's like the most important thing for the player to know is the loudest thing.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of subjectivity here, because some people will say that performing the moves is more important than the hits, for example. And some fighting games actually do make the perform louder than the hit or make them balanced.
Yeah.
But Smash does the opposite. Like the hits are the loudest thing, and the KO is the loudest thing actually in Smash, and same thing for Rivals. Then the hits are the second loudest thing, because it's a feedback for action basically,
Yeah.
and that's why they're very important. Below hits, we have some difference of philosophy with Smash, because I think performing special moves is very important. Performing moves gets a very low priority in Smash, and for us, we thought that they should be louder. Some movement, I think I place in the lowest tiers of sounds, but not all of them, because some normal movements they are very important in Rivals. And honestly, I think doing a platform fighter or just fighting games in general really changes how you perceive those. Because sometimes you need to consider how powerful the move is. You need to consider like how much it hits. Can it be a kill move and all of that? And this goes into defining the volume of the sounds. And it's not a straightforward process. One thing that is a trap that can happen in this type of game. It's like sometimes we'll get feedback that X thing is hard to hear in the mix, like when other things are happening. And sometimes you get like, oh, this is hard to hear, so we're gonna raise this volume. But then this other thing, it starts like masking other important things.
Yeah.
And then you get a situation in your hands where everything kind of sounds the same volume and you have no dynamic at all in the mix of the game. And it actually gets worse. So it is
Yeah.
not straightforward to define volumes for this type of game, actually.
Is that something that y'all like monitor and like still want to update as things go on, or is that something that you feel like it's like in a pretty good spot right now?
No, I think we have ways to go in that regard for some things.
Gotcha.
Doing the hit changes kind of set a baseline for us to know, hey, this is the loudest thing that will happen in normal gameplay. Except KO, but KO is not all the time.
Yeah, it's a little bit
So
more.
we know that this is here, so now we can have everything else be in between. And we have music, so like music is below stuff. One desire that I have that is gonna take some work still is that I want Rivals music to be louder. I think
Yeah.
our music is not loud enough right now.
Hmm.
But if I just add volume to the music right now, as things stand, some things will get lost in the
Yeah.
process.
It's
So I
like a
still want to do
balance game.
some work. Yeah, VO is probably my next focus, but once again, it's one of those changes where you're probably gonna, you maybe will feel it, will be like, hey, it's sounding better, but it's gonna be hard to pinpoint what exactly changed. So
Yeah, that makes a lot
I
of.
don't know if it's good or not, but hey, no changes like the hits will happen again probably.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually really good to hear. Where it's like y'all are happy with how those sound, so then you can like start working on like more niche parts of the sound design. I'm really looking forward to it though. But we're just about out of time, so just to wrap us up, like, do you have anything else about the game you want to share? Like, anything like you really enjoy about it, or anything like you're looking for like players to like look out for? Like,
Uh, Let me see. I want to talk a little bit about the team that is behind the audio
I'd
actually.
love to hear about that.
Uh, I went a little bit over it earlier, but we had quite a lot of people working in the audio of Rivals. Like we have some of them still working today, some of them that they started working some time ago and are not in the project currently, and they all made amazing work. It was amazing to work with them, so I want to shout out them. Uh, Both on Moon Sailor and Reservoir side, we have like the composing lead for Moon Sailor, Rafael Langoni, and Flashy Goodness on the Reservoir side, and they are assisted by Rafael Goulart. He does the FM synth programming. Basically, he's a master of chiptune sounds,
Yeah,
and he and Flashy, they're both great at doing chiptune sounds and trackers and stuff. And they Goulart helps with the arranging of those. And then we have Gabriel Marquez that does the more real side of the arrangements for a lot of the tracks. I think he's now almost all of the victory music is being done by him
oh
on
yeah.
the Moon Sailor side. I think all the wind jingles are Moon Sailor.
Mhm.
So he's doing those for skins and sometimes for new characters. Uh, we have a lot of people recording instruments for the game. We have audio engineers. They can change from music to music, but if you go to the Bandcamp of either Moon Sailor or Reza Force, you can check the full credits list for those. I won't remember all their names now.
Yeah.
And then on the sound design side, you have me as a technical sound designer for the game. You in the beginning of the process, we had Leo Perantoni. He started some of the initial sound design with Fernando Pepe. Leo had to leave the game for personal reasons, but he was a big fan of Rivals One, and it was really helpful having him in the team
Hmm.
by the time. I think he did Craig.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he did Rastor, Zeta, or Reno. Like I don't know. I came to the game when Craig was being made,
Hmm.
so and then we had Fernando Pepe was working and is still working with us on character sounds. Mateus Polatti is working on those. We had Zolyov, Eduardo Zolyov, that was working on. He worked in quite a few characters. Forsborn, Orcane, Claring, Loxodont were made by him. And yeah, it's a pretty good team. I loved working with Dan. Like, it's a very experienced team as well, so we could get pretty good results, I think. And honestly, it's been amazing working in Rivals of Ether 2. I think everyone in Ether Studios are amazing people. Like I said, I really like working with Dan. I think he's a great director. And he took a great risk doing Rivals of Ether 2.
Yeah.
Like, there were there were safer ways to invest his money
Yeah.
than to doing a very, very unsafe bet in Rivals of Ether 2. But honestly, it's kind of interesting because ever since I saw the first video of Rivals of Ether 2, like, I wasn't even in the project. My boss came to me and was like, "Give me your opinion about this." Like, and he showed me one of the earlier prototype versions of Rivals of Ether 2. And I was like, they have something special in their hands.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Because it didn't feel like an indie game using Unreal because, oh my god, Unreal 3D power. No, it felt like something solid.
Yeah.
And at the time, the style of the game wasn't even set. Like, it still had that illumination, like the global lightning that was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is Unreal Engine, that kind of lightning. And the game just got better and better. And it's interesting because, like, at the same time, I knew it was a huge bet making Rivals of Ether 2. I never felt like it would fail.
Yeah.
Like, I knew it wouldn't be like a miserable fail because I knew it was something special.
It's really,
And
yeah.
I gotta thank the community. Like, it's been really great looking at people talking about the game, getting all the feedback. We read the note board, by the way. We
Yeah.
don't answer everything because answering anything in some posts ended up being like committing to something one way or another. And sometimes we think it's better to not answer, like, we keep those in the back of our minds. Sometimes we discuss them internally. Some changes, like, were not answered on the note board, but we did get them in the game, so I really like seeing those. The feedback that we get there.
Yeah.
And when I was there, like, in the mains Discord, it's kind of rare, but sometimes I do poke in after changes, and if people ask some questions, I answer them. And I think people have been always pretty nice, and
Yeah.
I don't know, it's nice working on something that I know means a lot for people. And I hope the game lasts for a long time and I keep being here
Yeah, that's super awesome.
making audio for you all.
Like, it was so nice to like get to hear about the game behind the scenes. Like, I love to hear about like game development in general, like from any game. So hearing about it from like my favorite game, that's like super sick. And I've loved this little like sneak peek into like how it like works, like that you wouldn't normally get to see. So thanks for chatting with me today. Is there anything you want to plug before we like hop off here?
Yeah, go check the Bandcamp for Resoforce and Moon Sailor. Like, the soundtrack for both games are there. They're updated whenever a new track gets in the game. So yeah, go check that. I have a Twitter. I have not been very active there, but if you want to, I have the Twitter I use for VTuber related stuff.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
sick.
Fuji_Mitsuki.
Mhm.
You can find me there.
Yeah.
And yeah, check out Moon Sailor and Resoforce, and thank you for all the support in the game. And I hope you guys will keep supporting the game and the work we do.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see what y'all do with it. It's always so awesome getting to see like Rivals of Ether like grow and evolve over time. So I'm so excited to see what happens next. But thanks so much for everything, and thanks for doing the interview with me, and I'll catch you later. Bye for now.